Hi, and welcome to Blogging for Programmers. My name is Lewis Davidson, and today I want to talk about how the voice you use really affects how you are. Now, don't take my speaking voice here as a good example, because sometimes, as I just did, and next time I actually sort of did it on purpose, is don't like pauses and ums and things. I'm not suggesting you put all your pauses and ums in there, right? I want you to write like the best version of you speaking. So if you take your words and when you're talking, sometimes you stumble. I stumble a lot. You may if you watch the videos, you'll notice there's a lot of cuts because I have to think. I have to think and censor myself, which is really why I like writing so much. Because when you write, you can go, I shouldn't say that. Well, I shouldn't say that way. But you also want to sound like you. You don't want it to sound like it's somebody else. You don't want it to sound like AI is doing it. There was an episode of Friends where Joey was writing a adoption letter to say they would be good parents, and he wrote a really bland one, and they gave him a thesaurus, and he used a thesaurus on every single word. That's not good either. And AI can do that for you. They can make you sound very proper or very not proper, however you work it. But be yourself. Read your work out loud. And I wrote a blog on that a while back on my Simple Talk account. But, when you read your blog out loud, you're going to feel where parts of it aren't quite right. And then you're going to go, wait, that's not the way I should say that. I should say it this way. And that could change how you do things. It can change it to a way that it feels like when I'm sitting there reading it, you're standing there in front of me. And you don't want to sound fake. You don't want to sound like, any other AI tool. You don't need to use big words. There's certain words that have this meaning that's good, like the word robust. That was one that I see a lot. And I don't want to hear that word lost its meaning for me because it didn't mean the same thing as it should have. When you're thinking about a robust computer system, it doesn't crash. And if it crashes, it fixes itself, right? It's not just like robust coffee or things like that. And so you use these words in computery terms and it has one meaning. And if you use it a lot in all the meanings, it gets a little crazy. So use your own words. Um, read some Brent Ozar and Steve Jones. Those are two really immediate examples. I use them a lot. They're two really good writers. And if you've ever heard them in person, when you read their writing, you can just imagine them saying the words. Now, in as much as you need to write like you speak, there are a few caveats. Don't use jargon. Like if you have company jargon, especially company, because there's a lot of terms that we think are, universal terms, but they're not. Make sure you know that a term is real. If you're not quite sure, right? And usually it takes an editor to do this because an editor knows, like an editor usually will feel, I don't think that's a common term. And you look it up. But some things you believe because you were taught that. Maybe you went to a conference and they taught you something and you ingested that, you kept that. But it turns out that was their way of explaining it, not the general way of explaining it. And not that you shouldn't try to come up with new terms, new ways to explain things, but make sure you're not all jargon that people won't understand or all jargon that just drives people crazy. Okay? Especially terms. Acronyms are bad in and of themselves if you haven't explained them. Like SQL is something you don't have to explain that means structured query language. But, if you say something like DCL, DML, DDL, those kind of terms in databases should be defined, reminded people what they're seeing, what they're doing. Because otherwise, they might be confused and go, I don't know what that is. And if they don't know what that is, look it up. And when they look up DCL, they may find Disney Cruise Line instead of data control language. And you don't want that. Well, you probably don't want to lose them to their ideas thinking, I could go on a cruise. And if right, we don't want to lose them. You want to lose people on acronyms, generally speaking, because if they start going, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I need to look that up. I think I'm going to leave now. And it's just the way it is. So I will say this, okay? A little bit of structure is always good. And like I said, I've constantly said the first 10 episodes here, be careful to make sure this is fun and easy. But just like when you speak at a conference or you teach the class to your coworkers, you usually write down a little bit of an outline. So I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk about this. You don't need to write the whole thing. You don't need to write, but have an idea of where you're going so you don't ramble like you speak. So that best version of you speaking is what I mean, because you can edit yourself. And sometimes it's just good to write a big old stream of conscious. I'm going to write a query here, and I'm going to do something here, and I'm going to do something here. But as I didn't get mentioned in the previous thing, make sure you test that before you really start codifying the words you're going to put down and put out, because sometimes you're wrong. So many times I've been wrong. So many times the things I've thought or features that existed, they didn't exist yet, or they're going to exist later, whatever. So I hope this helps. I hope my speaking like I speak didn't confuse you on writing like you speak, but put your voice into it. Make it sound like you, even if, and I will say this, some people are not natural speakers of the language they're writing in. And a lot of people write in English because it's just fairly universal technical language. It doesn't bother me ever when I read someone's writing and they don't have perfect English because it's not their first language. Or as I mentioned in previous episode too, or they're just not good at it. Right? It's totally fine. That's not why I'm reading your blog. Most likely, I'm reading your blog to get some information. If it's interesting, if it's funny, if it's whatever, it's there. I can navigate through, just like I hope the people that are listening to this, watching even this episode of my podcast, that you can get through a bit of the not perfection of it, and you can get the bits and things you need. But if you can, the more you can sound like you know what you're talking about. I'm not sure I do now. I'm going to keep this because it kind of really does back what I'm trying to say. And unlike recording a video and then editing it, it's nothing. You can change your written word anytime you want to. You can reorganize it. You can use better words. You can, use tools to, correct your grammar. But I don't even know that you should take, if you sound like something speaking the language you're writing in, it's totally okay, right? Unless you're doing something professionally where they need you to sound a certain way, it's perfectly fine, right? As I've noted, you're writing for yourself. So write for yourself and write in your own language. Don't, feel the need to do both. With the translation tools these days, it's really great. I mean, they're not perfect, but you can read pretty much any writing in any language now. Possibly even if someone wants to do it in Chewbacca language. I'm not sure if that's possible or not. Wookiee language. Anyhow, this tip has gone off the rails. So write like you speak, speak like you speak. Just do your best to organize things enough so people get the point across. But the best writing generally feels like you're telling me something. You're just telling it to me in words. All right. Thank you very much. Goodbye.